Progress.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I use the 5 words: enter, place, shift, return, space. And the title of my paragraph is thoughts. In the middle of the night, I woke up energized, ready to start up my day. Suddenly, fresh thoughts come to mind. Without conscious, a word popped into my head. Important to me, I kept thinking about the 3 syllables. Thoughts seemed to come and go. In the darkest hour, I rushed on the straight path of the hallway, finding my way through the darkness. I entered a pitch black room with my thoughts running through my head. I placed my vivid images into action, typing words, shift the key by pressing the upper letter, key in and enter to return to the next paragraph, describing in specific detail emotions that brought my inner feelings, powerful meaning of liveliness, making space for stillness. In life, what is considered the awareness, senses of alertness play a significant role in who I am. So that's what I did with those 5 words. Thank you.
Hey, what part did AI do for you? What did it give you?
Okay, so when I put into Microsoft the 5 words, basically I asked for 2 paragraphs, and it just gave me, a bunch of, like, I don't write the same. But then I said, let's try it again, and let's put into the creative writing the same words. And it was like words that I can even pronounce or use in my vocabulary. So I figured, okay, let me see what I could do in half an hour that I have while I was making the stromboli. So this one I came out with, and it worked out fine. But, this is very new to me with AI, and I am just a person that I love to write words myself. I mean, it will help in different perspective, I think, but not in my writing. That's just my thought for now.
My recent experience with AI is that for 4 or 5 years now, I use a grammar program.
Do you want to come here? Because I don't think it's going to hear, or is he going to hear?
And because you,
Oh, it's good? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
A program called Grammarly,
Uh-huh.
which was periods, punctuation marks, quotation marks, spelling, things like that. And then in the last year,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, it's trying to like rewrite my sentences, okay? Or it asks me, do you want to have me rewrite the sentence? I say, yeah, go. And so I'm trying now to, when I do initial writing, turn Grammarly off. It's just me.
Okay.
Get my words, my thoughts down the way.
So how do you do that? In Microsoft? Oh, it is? Okay.
I think it's something like that.
Okay.
But it's like nonstop. If I have a paragraph, I'll turn on Grammarly, it'll go through, it'll do the punctuation. It'll say, how would we rewrite the sentence, the second sentence like this? I'll say, cool, rewrite it. No big deal. Still my thoughts, but
Yes.
they put it in a different order. Then I come back 5 minutes later. Oh, can we write the same sentence this way? And it's absolutely nonstop. It'll over and
Oh,
over
wow.
and over rewrite every paragraph or every sentence if you let it do it. It's like,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
where do I stop? And that's where it's almost, I'm second guessing, is this suggestion from Grammarly really better than what I initially had? Or is there a second suggestion better than the first suggestion? So in one sense, it probably does make for better prose at the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
but almost makes more work. Because it's always like double guessing me, and I'm double guessing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's
And
just,
then I went online.
Yes.
I said, is Grammarly AI? Like the response I got back, oh yeah, it is. Okay, they hooked me.
do you have your computer with you or? I thought it might be a good exercise if we have time. To just right here, throw those 5 words into the chat GBT.
oh, yes.
Let me see if I can pull that off without disturbing this meeting. I think.
I mean,
And sometimes if I'm doing dialogue, okay, it tries to make proper English. I know what proper English is. It's dialogue. It's 2 teenagers arguing, right? That's gonna be totally different.
Sure.
So yeah, it tries to make things perfect English, I think. You know, it makes like the common man or the common woman.
Yeah,
And we don't, none of us write like we're a common man or a common woman. You know, we have a different twist on it. We put words in different directions because that's the way we want to do it.
who is the common man and the common woman?
There's no-
Let's make it, let's not get started on that.
That's my experience with Grammarly now.
Yeah.
It's a good aid, but sometimes I write a sentence, it's just really stupid. I'm certainly not using it to write a story.
Yeah,
It
me
is to
either.
rewrite sentences, not write a story with my thoughts and where it's going. Yeah, I think I tried that once, about 2 years ago. I was like, stupid.
Yeah,
I never even liked, Microsoft Word spell checker. Because occasionally it'd catch me, reversing letters or just having something
Yeah.
wrong, but sometimes it would take perfectly good words and it didn't recognize them. Or
I guess you
change
should get that,
things.
yeah.
I was writing a legal brief one time and I wrote in the proscribed behavior. And it changed it to prescribed behavior, which means the exact opposite thing. Proscribed is prohibited and prescribed is recommended, you know? So, yeah, I never even liked that. It catches me once in a while on a mistake, but I'd rather have it just turn the thing, underline it or turn
But
it
it's also
blue
Microsoft,
or something.
Microsoft Word and Grammarly, there's a lot of words it doesn't even know.
yes,
So
I agree.
You want to learn the word, yeah, learn the word, because I use that word. You know, especially if it's slang, you know, a lot of times I'll write something as slang. Or get something from Urban Dictionary, or now kids write all these text messages and things like that. None of these programs have any of that yet, whatever.
I realized with the street that I lived on in Bucharest, Romania, it just didn't recognize. So I was trying to see what option it was giving me. There were none of the above. So it's still on the line. I'm like, okay, I have to just bypass that and just keep on going. So that's what I did. And that street has been there for ages.
Christina, if you don't mind, what are the 5 words that they don't have right in front of me?
Okay.
Because I just said to chat.
Okay. The 5 words is
Okay,
enter,
enter,
place, shift,
place,
place,
Hmm.
shift,
yep,
return, space.
that's so lazy. Now, so this is, so hit return. And I'm gonna let Tommy read it. Tom, because you're better.
But there's so many versions you could
This
put.
is coming out right now. You want to walk there and read it? So
Yeah, go ahead.
Since no one wrote it. Tom, this is what AI
Okay.
generated.
As Mira approached the ancient temple, a quiet house fell over the jungle. She hesitated for a moment before reaching out to enter the arched doorway. Its stone frame etched with mysterious ruins. Inside, the air grew cooler, and time seemed to pause in that sacred place where sunlight barely touched the floor. She stepped forward carefully, each motion deliberate, as if one wrong move might trigger a trap. With every slight shift in her position, the ground beneath her feet groaned, hinting at centuries-old mechanisms hidden below. A glimmer of metal caught her eye, a lever, half buried in the dust. Pulling it sent vibrations through the walls, and a hidden panel began to slide open, revealing a glowing passage below. Despite the temptation to explore further, Mira knew she had to return before nightfall, but something in that narrow space called to her, as if the temple whispered secrets of a forgotten word. With one last glance into the glowing corridor, she marked the location on her map and turned back, vowing to uncover its mystery another day. Would you like me to expand this into a longer story, create sci-fi fiction, or add dialogue?
This is time, folks. This is in real time, this is going on. So if we try to write stuff by ourselves without relying on AI, shame on us. I mean, it's a tool. It's like any other tool. It would be as if though.
Thank you, Tommy.
When they first invented the typewriter, people still insist that I'm writing with pen and quill. You use the tool, so. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Yeah, so I figure, I was like, let me just use AI, quickly. I'm like, let me see what idea it has. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. It has to come from me. Let me use my brains. That's how I look at it.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything new to share?
I know that Robert said he had some stuff he was going to bring tonight.
Well, actually,
Did you forget it?
no, it's just that I don't know if anybody really wants to hear any of my travel articles that I wrote for my magazine.
Would. I would love to.
But the thing is, most of what I wrote, long articles or all kinds of long, short stories and that. But I don't have a single short story less than 2,000 words. And I timed myself today. There's a story I'd love to read for you,
Uh-huh.
but I timed myself today and it took 25 minutes.
Well, there's a whole meeting.
What?
Well, let's see what you.
Yeah.
No, but I was wondering if.
Oh, yeah, we have
We
time.
can't all do a lot of talking, but if, rather than trying to come up with a 5-minute thing every single week, if I didn't read anything for 5 weeks, could I then read something that's a little longer or something like that?
Yeah,
Because the story would be a mess if I just picked a paragraph.
No, we have the time.
this is your meeting, folks.
Yeah.
If everyone else is in agreement and no one else, Mary, do you have something that you'd want to read tonight? We're trying to try to figure it out.
Ready?
Yes.
When I entered the place, a shift came over me. I would never return to the space I was in before.
Wow. Look at that.
That was pretty
Thank you,
good.
Mary.
Good.
That's beautiful.
To the point. Well, we're here, I know they have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, 7:30 or so.
Yeah.
Did you bring your article from Senior Savvy with you by any
I
chance?
did not.
You didn't
I
bring,
did bring a poem. I did bring a poem.
you brought it, so I'm just trying to do a time allocation here.
Sure.
How much time do you think your poem will take?
Probably 3 to 4 minutes.
3 to 4 minutes, you're needing 25 minutes, 20 minutes?
Say half an hour.
I'd read the story less if I read a travel thing.
Okay, the story, I would rather hear the story, if that's okay
It's
with you.
strange.
It's like, you're a model for some of us like me, 'cause I'm still learning. Eileen, you're not gonna join us in writing anything.
Oh, no.
Tom, do you have something that you'd want?
3 1-minute poems.
3 1-minute poems, so what,
Poems and.
okay, so why don't we start with,
Yes.
then we'll go to, yes, Mary?
I have a sequel, 5 minutes or
Okay.
to my book that I already wrote.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
perfect.
Beginning of the new one.
Oh,
All
good.
right, so
Excited.
we'll have Tom come up first, because again, we want to practice using this podium. First Tom, then Mary.
Yeah. It's perfect timing.
Then
Go ahead, Tommy.
And then you'll close out the meeting.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And I think
Thank
that
you.
brings us to where they took us out. All right.
First poem's titled There Were Times. There were times I cared not about the end game. Now is the time when reflect whence I came. There were times I acted in haste. Now is the time I measure my pace. There were times I shared thoughts out loud. Now is the time I put thoughts in the cloud. There were times I acted alone. Now is the time I enjoy family at home. There were times only my opinion mattered. Now is the time I need to discuss and gather. There were times I was young and deject. Now is the time I treat all with respect. There were times I thought in a vacuum. Now is the time I consider all things that happen. There were times I would rather fight. At last, now is the time I understand life. Sealback Hotel, Louisville, Kentucky, December 13th, 2013. Second poem.
I have to stop it right there.
Sure.
What's with the date? Is that when you wrote it?
That's when I wrote it.
Okay.
When I wrote it. I date everything and location. Second poem is called Youth Is. Youth is impatient. Youth is impulsive. Youth is fearless. Youth is innocent. Youth is arrogant. Youth is healthy. Youth is naive. Youth is too brief a period. Youth will grow old. Youth will die. French Express Coffee House, Kannapolis, North Carolina, December 13th, 2013. And then the final piece. This is called The End. The end. An incredulous event from the moment of birth is gone as quick, not experienced again. Unmeasurable by time, for the event occurs once. Though our friends live on, will never be again. We know death will come the instant we're born. There's no reason to feel glum. There's naught to mourn. Cosmic efforts to derail this darkness shan't prevail. They're impossibly futile to achieve or make fruitful. For mortals, death is life's outcast. Succumb to its coming and live full to the last. Deja Vu Hair Salon, figured that one out, Kannapolis, North Carolina, June 13th, 2014. I guess I was waiting for a haircut.
Yeah,
You can write anywhere, literally, you can write anywhere.
thank you, Tom.
And those are, ideas just pop out. Boom, let me write this,
You know,
no matter where you are.
Well, that's what happens with me. I put one of the posts on my social media, Facebook. Just the thing, by luck, by chance, by the second chance, it came at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that got the most view.
You never know.
that's right.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. I just want to say I welcome comments when I'm done reading. Criticisms,
So this is from the
suggestions. It's not very long. So, but if you don't have anything to say, that's fine too. Gertrude was a very young, resilient 72-year-old woman. She had began a series of visits with her granddaughter, Cindy, on the exploration of reasons why women choose to give their bodies over to the condition of pregnancy. Sorry.
okay.
I don't need that in my hand. Thank you. She believed pregnancy to be a condition of choice as a means to an end, a baby human. Most cultures and societies do not practice nor promote this choice-filled lifestyle for women and men, but we do see signs of change popping up. We must take care of ourselves and be a model of personal responsibility so that we feel good about our choices and not afraid to see the other happy options there are for our lives. For instance, I have talked to a few young women who in their childbearing years have found relationships with family members such as nieces and nephews or their friends and acquaintances, children to be extremely rewarding and even vitally needed. These relationships, they say, are very valued for the time they have to put to this way of nurturing a child or even many children. Some history on the creation of the women in this story. Gertrude is the author of this story and also the self-appointed matriarch of this 3-generational family of women. Gertrude is being the first generation, Petra, Gertrude's daughter, being the second generation, and Cindy, Petra's daughter, and Gertrude's granddaughter being the 3rd generation represented in this story.
I do like it just the way it is.
Hmm?
What do you think, Vincent?
Yeah,
I like it just the way it is. It's beautiful.
Okay,
It
thank you.
just caught my attention, right?
yeah, and
And with the generations, and I like the Gertrude, the name.
Is
Would you come out with the name? Just like randomly?
You have to read the first book.
thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now you wanna make me climb up there?
Yes,
Jim,
if you can.
You know what, we can just maybe,
No, that's all right, I'll do it.
well, you
If
should,
I
maybe
fall
we can bring
down-
this over here.
No, if I fall down, Eileen will pick me up, she's done it before. Right, Eileen?
There's always 911.
It was the fire
I
department.
told my daughter, I'm your emergency person anymore. I can't be there as fast as 911. And it's really emergency. Call me.
It was the fire department that came and got me in the middle of the
If you
night.
need emotional support, yeah, fine. I'll come, but
I'm okay,
All right,
I'm okay, here we go.
okay, Jim,
All right,
forward here.
as you all know, as I keep talking about, I spent time in the Coast Guard here in North Carolina back in the 70s and the early 70s. And a lot of this stuff that I have from back then comes from that time. This is entitled Fort Macon, which was just on the other side of the sand dunes of where the Coast Guard station was, okay? And it goes like this. Buried amidst the drifting and sand dunes and the swaying seals, where the stunted drawer folks form a wall almost as thick as any brick and mortar works that's ever been constructed to defend the Carolina coast, still stands forlorn, forsaken, old Fort Macon, with her dried up, grass-grown moat agape and massive wooden drawbridge gate ajar, defending wistful memories of present-day descendants of her complement, who still believe today, as all those men who stood along her balustrades had done, for what the Southern ethos still embraces as the principle, the right, the way of life for which those men of long ago stood, every one of them prepared to fight and die. Their rootful ghost whistles through empty chambers still, in service to the might-have-beens. They still fervently proclaim. They never got a chance to fight when the armada from the north, the seaward coil of Taylor's Anaconda, merely passed them by to face instead Fort Fisher at the Cape Fear River's yawning mouth, and by subduing her, proceeded up the stream to block the vital port of Wilmington, which had become the South's last open access to the sea, whose conquest by the North led in the end to Appomattox Courthouse. And then I have a postscript by the Greek poet Constantine Cavafy, who wrote, "Honor to those honor to those in their life who, I'm sorry, honor to those in their life who did, God, I'm having a shot, I apologize. Honor to those who in their life define and guard their Thermopylae." That was by C.P. Cavafy. Sorry about my inability to speak it smoothly.
I need to comment on that
Go ahead.
because he's not here today. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, what happened here?
What happened?
Nothing. Okay, so for the record, because James Polk, who's part of this group, couldn't be here tonight, writes about that period in history that you just described. And I want to make sure he gets a copy of what you just read. Just, well, yeah, because I think the two of you guys could collaborate. I have imagined those ships sailing up, and I like the way you referred to them as the tailors, right? The Yankee boys that everyone dismissed because they couldn't possibly stand up to the Southern virile, tall, all that stuff. And yet they sail by, and then you referred to Fort Fisher, which I think they actually documented that fort and that fight in a movie called Glory, if I recall.
Yeah.
Denzel, was it? It wasn't Denzel Washington. Broderick Crawford, I think, was the star in that. But anyway, well done. Appreciate it, Jim. And I hope that you will find time and opportunity to collaborate with James Polk. And I think the two guys, you two could come up with
Oh, I'm so busy.
quite something. Yeah, so busy. Okay, on that happy note, I will invite Robert to come up and share the bring it home, as they say in the trade, right?
I've got this story in with any of those travel things. I've only got them on the computer.
Yeah.
Is that a problem setting that up there?
If we move this one slightly to the right, you'll be able to talk and read at the same time, I think.
Okay.
Yep, let's do this. Fortunately, we have a rather wide podium here. I think that'll accommodate.
You want me to do the short story or to the
Whichever
travel
you-
piece?
Whichever you prefer.
The short story might be pushing the time.
Let's do the short story.
All right.
Okay, now, so
I'll look at.
Are you able to look at that and look at this at the same time?
I could, yeah, just one second.
Okay,
In moving it up, I went and lost where the story is. This is from a book of short stories called Of Foreign Lands and People. But I just had it up here,
Huh.
and I think my thumb hit the touchpad and it went back to the beginning. I think it's the third story, yeah. Come on. The story is called The Dung Gatherer. It's something from when I
dumb or dung?
dung, D-U-N-G,
Okay.
cow poop.
I have a vision of someone in a parade following a horse.
No,
Not that kind of story, okay.
no, I was doing a little photography job in India, and I ran into the dung gatherer, and then I learned a few things about her and her family, and it made for quite a strange story.
Okay, so this is gonna be the story that you're gonna read?
Yeah.
The Dung Gatherer, okay.
Yep.
Are you able to,
Yeah,
you know, so you're, just so you know what the folks out in Zoom land are experiencing, this is what they're seeing,
okay.
okay?
Could move this just slightly. Oops. It begins in the Bhavnagar district of the Saurashtra region of the Indian state of Gujarat. There are wonders to behold as far as the eye can see. The broad, flat beaches along the Gulf of Combat are home to the world's largest shipbreaking yards. Rusting supertankers that are no longer seaworthy and tarnished cruise ships that are no longer fashionable all end up in this nautical graveyard. Here there will be stripped, dismembered, and cut into convenient shards of scrap metal. Farther along the coast, near the city of Bhavnagar, lie the vast salt production lagoons where seawater is turned into salt. A century ago, the great Mahatma Gandhi began his historic campaign against British oppression here with the defiant Salt March to the Sea. Tens of thousands of Gandhi supporters trudged through this area as an act of civil disobedience, and the worldwide passive resistance movement was set loose. To the, oh, gosh, what the heck? Just touchpad problems. It's touchy. To the northwest, major highways lead into the city of Bhavnagar. Here, city planners have built lovely flower gardens around some of the major intersections. This is especially pleasant for commuters stalled in traffic at the roundabouts, where it may take the better part of an hour to go the final kilometer to one's destination. Itinerant cattle stroll aimlessly through the stalled traffic, adding still more time for drivers to enjoy the gardens. Storks with nests built high up in the Ashoka trees look down to admire the vehicular gridlock of an industrious people. Cars and lorries of every color and mark honk their horns in an atonal concert of impatience. At least the drivers can contemplate the flowers and the birds around them while they wait in stalled traffic. Just ahead lies an historic hotel that once served as a princely palace. Acres of gleaming white sheets surrounding a vast outdoor patio flutter and luff like brigantine sails in the morning sunrise. Nearby, a raised platform is being fitted with tables to seat 1,403 wedding guests. Two smaller platforms are raised even higher so that all of the city's great families will be able to view a bride, a groom, and their high-born parents and aunties. Along the parched fields that will soon be jammed with automobiles, motorbikes, tuk-tuks, free-ranging cattle search for any grass that's fit for sacred animals to eat. These ungulate rovers are only a few of the millions of cattle that roam unhindered throughout India. And not far away is the lowly dung gatherer with her children in tow. Amid the din of a small army of hotel and catering workers rushing to finish preparations for feeding a multitude, the young woman bends down to scoop up cow dung with her bare hands. Her dark skin is stained almost black up to her elbows after years of gathering animal waste. While some of the feces she collects may be used to fertilize lavish gardens, most of it will be dried and then burnt to warm, modest dwellings. The dung gatherer's 10-year-old boy tries his best to help, although his small hands cannot hold much dung, unless it's mostly dry. Wet dung is harder to carry, while dung that is completely dry just falls apart. The best dung is about 3/4 dried out, with just enough moisture to bind it together without dribbling through the fingers. Flies swarming around the soiled family are content with any dung they can get, whether wet or dry. No man, woman, or child will come near the dung gatherers due to the stain and the stigma of their labors. For the same reasons, these children will never see a schoolroom. Their smell alone will confine their movements like a prison warden. The odor also ensures that these children will have no choice but to follow in the vocation of their mother. Although this family and millions of other gatherers provide a useful service to a land with more than 308 million roaming cattle, the dung gatherers must carry out their distasteful duties in quiet misery. They are all but invisible to the crowds passing them by. This particular family of dung gatherers is further cursed by their birth as Dalits, which are also known as untouchables. India's caste system officially abolished this caste decades before this family was even born, yet most Indians did not seem to get the memo about ending caste. And even if cursed by low birth, most of the 200 million Dalits are not reduced to collecting animal feces. Some Dalits are successful in business or government. However, this unfortunate mother was left destitute when her husband and eldest son were killed in a construction accident while working in Dubai. With the cooler weather approaching, the mother went out to gather cow dung to burn to heat her one-room shanty. Before long, her dung gathering had become a full-time occupation. A dung merchant only pays her a pittance for her labors, but it keeps her family fed. Today, the dung gatherer was allowed to work around the great hotel property. No wedding guests would want to step out of their fine automobiles and promptly plant their new shoes into a pile of fresh cow manure. The dung gatherer and her children will have to work quickly, however, as they must be gone before the first wedding guests arrive in the evening. The Dalit family was already tired. Things jumping around again. Was already tired by the time they reached the hotel, as they'd walked for hours across the city to get here. It was near midday when a high-born Brahmin woman came out to the field where the family was working. The kind woman was wrapped in blue and white silk, and her sandals were studded with jewels. She clearly must have been a mother, for the way she affectionately looked at the soiled children. Her lovely face bore no scorn nor disdain as she laid a red jute bag on the ground near where the family was working. She smiled as she pointed down to the bag with her bejeweled right hand. Then she turned and carefully made her way back to the safety of cleaner sidewalks. The boy ran over to examine the bag. He squealed with joy when he saw the food treats inside. After pausing her work, the Dalit mother examined the gift and then bowed in the direction of her retreating benefactor. Inside of the jute bag were 4 Mumbai grilled veggie sandwiches with green chutney, butter, cucumber, cheese, and chaat masala. The kind woman had even thought to include many packets of wet wipes so the Dung family could clean their hands before eating. In addition, there were 2 apples, 1 carrot, 3 uncooked potatoes for later use. Oh, my picture is not there. Okay, sorry. After finishing, where do we go now? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, the cursor's jumping around on me. That's after finishing their meal. That's what. After finishing their meal, the entire, let's see. The boy carried a battered plastic pop bottle over to an outdoor water faucet built on the side of a fountain. He started to fill his bottle. Just then, a thin man in a tan-colored uniform that was too large for him came around the fountain and yelled at the boy in Hindi. The uneducated boy did not know what the man was saying. Just then, the man smacked the boy's back with a small switch that he had broken off the nearest apple tree. The boy cried loud enough to bring his mother running. The uniformed man raised the switch up again and threatened both the boy and his mother in this unfamiliar tongue. Just as the man was about to strike, his arm was yanked backwards so hard that the man ended up sprawled on his back on the ground. He landed in fresh dung, the wet kind that's most difficult to pick up with your fingers. A bearded man with a green turban towered over the bully. The Sikh man pulled the bully up and then shoved him backwards until he retreated away from the dung-gathering family. The thin man with a soiled shirt continued to make threats after retreating a safe distance. Yet the boy's rescuer was not worried. Although the turbaned man was a lorry driver who had just delivered a load of folding chairs to the hotel, his brother happened to be a high-ranking officer in the Gujarati State Police. Therefore, the driver feared neither bullies nor retribution. After the young boy stopped crying, his mother bowed to her son's rescuer. The Sikh man filled the boy's plastic water jug for him, then he returned to his Eicher flatbed lorry and fired up the growling diesel. The entire scene was observed by a wealthy young man on a large balcony in the nearest corner of the hotel. As the day wore on, the first Jaguars began to arrive. No one else threatened the hardworking family, but 2 well-dressed hotel porters waved their arms to tell the dung gatherers that it was time for them to move on. Yet there remained one part of the field that was especially rich in half-dried manure, the kind that was most convenient to pick up. And there was still enough room in the mother's wicker basket for more of that dung. The hotel staff continued to wave their arms to usher the family away. A crowd of recently arrived commuters and guests had formed on the road beside the field. Just then, a fair-haired Englishwoman stepped out of the crowd and walked carefully onto the field. The woman's silver-gray hair seemed to glow like a halo in the warm afternoon sun. She wore a pink silk blouse, clean white linen jacket, and slacks. As she moved toward the family, she rolled up the sleeves of her jacket. Then she removed her rings, watch, and bracelets and placed them in her jacket pockets. When she touched the Dalit mother on her shoulder, several guests who were watching gasped. The onlookers were even more shocked when the woman bent down and shoved her manicured pink fingertips into a large mound of fresh cow dung. The smell was worse than she had anticipated, so she turned her head to one side. Yet she still picked up the dung and carried it to the Dalit's basket, dropping half of it along the way. Another murmur went up from the startled crowd. By now, there were dozens of affluent guests watching from hotel balconies and from the car park. The sunburnt Englishwoman continued to ferry dung over to the basket, although she took twice as long to do it as the more experienced dung gatherers did. After 10 minutes of self-degradation, the woman in white stood up straight
and stared down at her feces-stained hands. The young boy went over to the red jute bag and brought the woman 4 small packets of sanitary wipes, so that the generous Brahmin woman had given to them. With a crowd of strangers gawking at her, the Englishwoman carefully cleaned her hands with the wet wipes. Once her hands were as clean as possible under the field conditions, she walked through the stone-faced crowd of onlookers. She strolled into the hotel with her head held high. After a bath, a shampoo, a manicure, a change of clothing, and a dry cleaning order, she would go out to dinner somewhere, far from the disapproving gossip of those who had witnessed her magnanimous yet inexplicable stunt. Many in the crowd debated who did the most for that poor family. But this was not properly a question of who did the most. Rather, it was a question of who did anything at all. Everyone who was present either did something to help or they simply remained silent and let injustice prevail. While most onlookers only offered gossip, punctuated by disdainful looks, one Brahmin mother gave food to nourish and sustain the tired, dirty children. Then a Sikh lorry driver stepped forward to do what men can do best. He protected the lowly family from a bully's threats and the stinging lash. The Englishwoman, dressed in white, was more of a mystery to the crowd and the curious bridegroom who had been watching the entire scene from his grand hotel balcony. His own mother, dressed in blue and white silk, stood beside him. It was obvious to the young man that the Englishwoman came from a well-to-do family. Perhaps she was a Quaker working for Oxfam, or he wondered if she felt the tug of noblesse oblige. Or perhaps she was just a trust fund liberal from Knightsbridge who was haunted by the guilt of her own privilege. While many observers, it's almost done. While many observers can understand the gifts of food and protection, this woman's purpose was less clear. She may have offered the poor family a fleeting whisper of dignity as they watched a fine lady share in their ignoble task of dung gathering. On the other hand, the well-meaning woman may have actually raised cruel hopes for equality, which an unfair world would still not allow. Yet by briefly helping the dung mother perform her odious work, she had followed the example of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And by actually touching a person who was branded from birth as untouchable, she shamed a multitude that already knew that such prejudice was unlawful and wrong. The poor dung gatherer and her family eventually packed up and trudged away. The boy carried the smallest child on his back while his mother dragged the basket laden with cow dung in a little red wagon. Back in the hotel, a wealthy young couple prepared for a wedding that would showcase the prestige of 2 of the state's richest merchant families. Oddly enough, during the lavish feast, the groom ate very little. He was plagued with thoughts of cattle feces. By 2 in the morning, the motor vehicle traffic on the nearby roundabout had all but dissipated. Aimless cattle and sputtering tuk-tuks now had the great roadway to themselves. Yes, in the Bhavnagar district of the Saurashtra region in the Indian state of Gujarat, there truly are wonders to behold as far as the eye can see. That's it.
That's great.
It's a story.
Well, I have some questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Several times you mentioned, you went to some detail in describing the colors of the costume of the clothes that they were wearing. Was that purposeful? Was there some symbolism to the different colors, or did that just add flavor?
There is, and it's mostly, as you would think, though, that silks, expensive clothing, sort of goes with the class, and just more ordinary colors, red and green and so on, and a turban and stuff like that sort of go with the driver and police class.
Okay, so like purple is typically associated with the rulers, with kings.
Yes.
Is that also in that culture a purple, is that a sign hour and position or not?
Could be. It's always been like you say, a regal color. And I don't know the connections to Christianity. Some people think that St. Thomas, doubting Thomas,
Mhm.
spent his last years, he actually went into Asia Minor and then went east. Some people think he actually made it to India. And there's a lot of people have written about the Bhagavad Gita sounds a lot like the Sermon on the Mount. You know, there seems to be some cross mingling of, so I don't know. I don't know how much of our Mediterranean world got to India. But in this case, it's a subject that I tried to have a subject that make people think, what? You wrote about cow poop, you know, but then you work in some of the class stuff, and it's not an exaggeration. I'm not some sort of a crybaby liberal trying to say that, oh, in India, everything's bad, you know, or something like that. But is it time?
Well, two observations. First of all, I had a message from Rosa,
Oh, yeah.
and she couldn't be with us because she is having digestive problems.
Oh, dear.
So I'm glad wasn't here.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
At this particular moment in time.
Yeah. Okay.
And nonetheless, I was listening to you, but I could not resist eating the wonderful treats that Christina bought, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
didn't affect that at all.
No, I've already eaten up a bunch.
There's some more here, folks.
Yeah.
Why don't let it go to
Oh,
waste.
so-
Second too.
Yeah.
I have a question. I know you mentioned about cleanness,
Hmm.
washing hands and wipes.
Yep.
Is that a,
Washing feet.
and washing feet, is that a big thing in their culture? Like, with the wipes, you mentioned the wipes.
Any cultures like that are that hot.
Okay,
Sanitation and cleanliness. Um, when Westerners go into Indonesia after the great earthquake or the sea wave or whatever, and they bring in portable bathrooms, there's a great scandal. What? You didn't provide that? You cannot possibly clean yourself without water, and you didn't provide this, you didn't provide that. You know, they have very rigid rules and high expectations. They look sometimes down on us as we're dirty, you know, we're dirty people. And we just merely take showers, you know, so.
yeah, because you mentioned a couple of times in different ways. I just, I was curious.
Yeah, but I was trying to be sympathetic while at the same time not trying to pretend I wasn't looking right at this. And I looked at a woman who's had a big basket on a little wagon, and I was watching her pick up, and she didn't have a shovel. She picked it up in her hands, and they're black all the way up to her ear. And it really, and then I asked, what is this? Why is she picking this up? Oh, she's just a dung gatherer, you know, she's a Dalit, you know, and then well, what are her kids? Shouldn't they be in school? Oh, those kids will never go to school. Those kids will never go to school. Why not? They smell, you know? And so it's quite like a social indictment, but at the same time, there's a little humor in there too. And I was trying anyway. So.
Robert, did you encounter a hibachi over there where they actually take that dung and they use it to cook their food?
I never saw it cooked, but dry dung keeps a lot of, in the cooler weather, the cooler weather of the winter, dry dung burns, you know, and it's like, ooh, but it does. And I asked about that too. What do they do? Use this for fertilizing all the rose gardens or something? No, most of it goes.
No.
Hope that's not me.
Yeah.
Most of it goes to heating homes. So
That's the case
Interesting.
in the American frontier, on the plains in particular, where buffalo chips. were
buffalo
used
chips.
for breakfast.
Yeah. That's what they.
Were they used for cooking though? Did they actually use that as a source of fuel?
This I can't tell you right now.
Because I was very, very young, 5 years old, when I was in Okinawa, and I still have the hibachi stove
Mhm.
that mom and dad took back from Okinawa. And I remember her saying that they used guns
Mhm.
to cook the food on this hibachi. It's like a portable, you know, the stove. And I haven't confirmed that, and I'll supposed to have to ask AI what they think of it. But Robert, as always, thank you for that.
Sure.
I love the way you did the backstory ahead of time and then you bring it home, so. Anyone else for the good of the cause? Yeah. Romney, you got anything? Anything? Do you have anything you want to read and talk about? Sure. We have time, we have 7:30.
Okay. This, the next book I'm gonna publish, I alluded to this about 4 or 5 meetings ago.
Thank God.
This was the gum was used in India to cook the food.
What's that?
Gum was used in
It is used to cook the food, so, okay, then my mom didn't make that.
This is basically just sort of an update on my current project. It's, if I mention the word, memoir or autobiography, that would put you in the neighborhood, but that's not exactly it. Think of this, my next publication is gonna be more like an encyclopedia of my life. It's all the different parts of my life that, if put together, could morph into like a autobiography. But what I did was, I really wrote this for the grandkids and great grandkids. Who was this guy, right? Who was he? Without having to read a memoir. So here's the basic titles are, the first title is, it talks about all the addresses I've lived at. I've had 32 mailing addresses in my life. I give when we moved, the date and time and all, date and month and all that. 9 different schools, where the school was, what months I attended that school. All the jobs I've had, 28 in my lifetime, 28 different jobs, 28 different employers, and the titles. So right there, it's like, okay, now I know who this guy was. Here's where he lived, here's where he went to school, here's what his jobs were, here's where his titles. Then I have a section of childhood activities. And this is sort of like a history lesson for kids today. What did I do in the 50s to entertain myself? In Buffalo and in Mount Holly, New Jersey. What did I do for my mom? What did I do for my dad? What games did I play? I listed every game I played, indoor, outdoor, hide and seek, you know, whatever, you name the game, the Monopoly games and so on and so forth. So here's what a kid did to entertain himself. Then I did childhood memoirs, and these are stories I actually have written. I write about playing, about running, about snow sledding, about thinking about my mother, thinking about my dad. These are part of a memoir at some point, but here's the stories I've written about my youth, but little short things, you know, 8, 10, 12 pages long. And then I have a big chunk on speech and debate. I went to prep schools and was a speech and debate team in 3 different schools and college at Loyola and Baltimore. I talk about the tournaments, the awards, and what debate was. It was quite a listing of what I've accomplished and trophies and so on and so forth. Then you ready? Vietnam. I do my AWOL years. Volunteer for McCarthy, co-chairperson of the Maryland Students of McCarthy. Left school one day, went to American University, got a bus, worked for McCarthy on, knocked on doors in Muncie, Indiana. Went to Nebraska, was a ward captain in Nebraska, called the Dean of Studies at Loyola and dropped out of school. Went on to California, worked for McCarthy for 3 weeks in California in his Southern California office. By the time I got back to my parents' house in Springfield, I had been drafted. Lost my student deferment, got drafted, wanted me to fly this is part of this is in here, but not that much. Wanted me to fly helicopters, flight warrant officer. There was a 3-year hitch versus 2. So, maybe infantry. Got orders to Nam and went AWOL for 2 years. So I did 2 years, you did 4, right? Sort in one sense, right? Those 2 years were better than, obviously, a year in Nam. 2 of the best years of my life, but that's another whole story. Then I do formative influences. And this is like the people that have influenced me, and you and Chuck you're part of those people. And all the people that influenced me, the scholastic influences in my life, the political and social events that made me who I am of the 60s and 70s, whether it's Martin Luther King being assassinated, event after event after event that was in the news. and just affected me as they build up and build up, good and bad. Life altering decisions, deciding to drop out of college, and 4 or 5 other things, points in my life that pivoted. I decided to do this, my whole life went like that. So that's part of what I'm writing about. Music, movies, literature, newspapers, and then a summer hitchhiking in England and Ireland with a girlfriend. And that was like, we had a map of Ireland and a map of England and our thumbs. And that was it for 6 weeks. That was fun. That was fun years. Then I write a section of all my travels with the grandchildren. So I documented 26 different trips where my wife and I took the kids out of state or a hotel room or something like that, or flying overseas or flying to California. Sort of documented that. Here's what I did with the grandchildren and the month and the date and where and who went. And then finally, there's never finally, 33 essays that I've written, independent, like 3 I read today, the poems, essays and poems, 33 different things that I've written that reflect my thinking as I'm becoming who I became. And the first one started in 2001. The most recent one was just 2 or 3 months ago. And then all of my corporate and personal triumphs and high water marks, awards in the companies I work for, training that I had, training seminars, and so on and so on and so forth. Sort of document in about 30 pages my corporate life. What was my corporate life about? Just bullet points that eventually could become a memoir someday. And then the book finishes with a section called Kids Write, where the 5 oldest grandchildren wrote stories when they were 12, and I still have. And 2 of them were trips to London. Matthew, one time, and Faith or another, when they got back, wrote an 8 or 9 page story about them going to London. They were like 12 or 13. And then 2 twin granddaughters wrote stories about travels with Grandpa. And then finally, the youngest granddaughter, who was 11 at the time, she wrote a story about an evening we had and having spaghetti dinner and things like that. So it's sort of, that's an encyclopedia of Tommy Doonan, just basically bullet points, bullet points, bullet points, except for the stories and the prose and poetry. And maybe within 3 weeks, I'll have this ready to go. And it'll be sort of a hardback for the first time for me. There's 50 to 60 photos, black and white and color. It's gonna be big time stuff. Hopefully it works. The formatting might be difficult, but maybe not. And it should be a real my family heirloom. Who was this guy? I wish I knew 1% of this about my dad, and I don't. Because he left some stuff, but his whole corporate life and things like that, I have no idea. Barely, but a little bit, not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I'm wondering, if you've thought about having some kind of a unifying thread through all of the characters.
Now you're making me do more work.
Yeah, I am.
You've done that before.
But, well, you put the hidden treasure on there and, yeah, but if you remember back in the first book I wrote, we talked about references to apples of gold. This is by Joe Petty. So that each of the characters in my book, at an appropriate moment in time when they were having an epiphany and moment, would bring out a quote from that book. You don't have to do that, but something like that, where you're tying generational thread.
I'll come up with something.
I know you will.
Somehow.
I'm not gonna tell you what to do, I'm just telling you, you might want to think of it.
The other lesson was amazing about me doing this. My dad did teach me how to keep records and track stuff. I've got the days and the dates from the 60s that I was doing debate tournaments. And the days and the dates every year from 63 up until 2 weeks ago of where and when I've been and what I did. You know, every single trip I took with my company, Brown Foreman, I know where and when I took that trip. And that's a lot of flying around for 20 years with a company, where and when I was. Right.
Boring.
Well, no, you write it down. My memory's not that good, but I just keep good records in different times. A lot of times it's pieced together old photographs. Old photograph. Oh, there's a date on the back. I was there then. Now I know. Stuff like so. That was a lot of putting this and other things together, looking at old photographs, and that helped with chronology, especially my early years traveling with my mom and dad. I didn't remember that, but looking at the photographs, I was able to piece together years of traveling with them up and down the East Coast. And then I wrote it down.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
This is all for your memoir, right?
Pardon?
This is all for your memoir? All this that you talked about today?
In a sense,
Is that what
yes,
you're
but the
doing?
memoir's already written.
Oh, the memoir's already
It's
written.
sort of, this in many ways, this is a summary. of-
Summary of.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So,
This basically says I was in Seattle. Here's when I was in Seattle.
Um,
Memoir might be 30 pages talking about being AWOL in Seattle and anti-war movement and getting arrested in Berkeley, California.
very nice.
right. Yeah, so keeping a log is a
Yeah.
really good idea. Ralph Waldo Emerson almost insisted upon that. And I kept a log going back into college days, I think actually in late high school. My wife kept a log. And when I went to write the book, similar to what you're trying to accomplish, and we have some, you know that you and I have synergies at Mount Holly and so Buffalo and so forth. That log came in handy as notes at the end of the story, so people could go and relate back to parts of the story and say, what happened on that day and what was going on in the world at that particular moment, was a Kennedy assassination or whatever it happened to be. It's very, very helpful to do that.
So
So
I do it every day with the family.
yeah,
Like what crazy is 2024, crazy is 2021. Every significant thing that happens in our family. Sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's 4 or 5 times a week. I just open up the Excel file, type it in, close it up, and maybe 5 or 6 years now, I want to go back and piece things together. Oh, I know the times and dates of when Irene did this, when Leslie did that, when
Yeah.
John did that, and boom, boom, boom.
exactly.
Maybe I'll never use it, but
Exactly. So thanks, Tom, for that. And I like the generational thing. I was going to suggest that for those of you who know, my granddaughter did the cover work on one of the short stories I wrote called The Monarch and the Moth. She did this when she was in 7th grade, I believe. Anyway, she's a sophomore in college now, and she's pursuing a career in journalism. So good for her, right? We are mindful of the clock. I know that they're nice enough to let us hang out in here, but I do want to mention a couple of things on behalf of the network. We're not going to meet next month in July because the very date that we would normally meet, the 4th Thursday of the month, happens to be when the network is running the Squires workshop, the Squire Summer Workshop. And I know that 1 or 2 people said they were going to go to that. I don't know if anybody in this room is going, but others in the group indicated they would be going to that. It's up in Davidson, at Davidson College, a beautiful campus. It's right literally in our front yard. And it is, I think, under $500 to spend like several days really honing the craft, really getting expert knowledge from people who've been there and are successful and made lots of money with their work. So if you're able to think about it, I think the registration closes next
July 11th.
July 11th, it closes. Okay, so if you go, there's a reference to it in the newsletter. If you look at that, we'll publish one more newsletter in July, but we won't have a meeting in July. We'll meet back in August, and we will meet back at the Active Parks and Living Center over there on Corbin Avenue. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We dodged the storm. It came and went while we were in here, and set off a couple of car alarms, I guess, but sun is shining, so it's a great day. Thanks, everybody. I think there's a few Strombolis left, so if no one takes it home, no meeting in July, correct. August, we're back at the center, correct. Yes. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. And Rosa, I'm sorry you couldn't join us, but when you get the recording, you know that we're thinking about you, and just as well that you stayed home today. Get well. Thanks, everybody. Yes, good.
Permission to Cindy my name.
What is that?
Permission to take this.
Come on, come here.
my only
You
cousin
do it.
older than me, he joined the Coast Guard.
I just want to make a quick thank you to Cindy Minette. She's the one that let us
Oh.
use this beautiful facility for today. And it was a pleasure to make Stromboli for everyone and sharing. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Have a good night.
What do you do about,
Thank you, Christine.
she wanted